Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be walking you through how ATL Jacob makes hard samples and beats for the likes of course himself, Future. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We are on the road to 1,000 subs, almost there. Before we get into this, I've got a nice little few drum kits down for you in the description, so help yourself to it if you please. But without further ado, let's just jump into this. So first things first, coming into the sample, I got myself an instance of Omnisphere, got up the classic nylon guitar preset, and then this is the pattern I laid down. Very simple, straightforward. It's just a 2-bar that loops over, so we'll just focus in on this little 2-bar here. And when we're looking at this whole melody, right, it might look a bit complex, it might look a bit too much, but all this actually starts off with is a diminished minor, as you can see from here. However, all I did was just take this up an octave, and then instead of having the note play here, I just took it back a bit. Then from this point, I honestly just started clicking and dragging, seeing what sounded good. Just making use of notes already being played, as you can see here. Making use of notes that are one semitone apart, of course, like right here. Making the most of it. And then what I did was just add these notes at the very end of each bar, as you can see, coming into the halfway point. And I just had this one play over again. It's simply just play what sounds good by ear. But most importantly, use notes that are one semitone apart, which create that nice little dark atmosphere, a bit of tension. Once I laid down this whole melody, I rendered it out and I took it up 3 semitones, so it's going from a D sharp minor up to an F sharp minor in the scale. And then the last thing I did was actually reverse it because it sounds super fire, sounds really dope for Future. And without further ado, this is what the sample sounds like. And there we have it, sounding nice, a bit of like a little experimental vibe, especially coming into the Future sounds. But for the effects, I got myself an instance of EQing. All the lows are out, few frequencies been ducked. Then I added Soothe 2 on its default settings. Of course, then I got a bit of RC20 going on over here. And then last but not least, some Valhalla Vintage Verb Reverb, just to add a bit of ambience to the whole vibe. And as you can see, I stereo separated this melody 33%. Next thing I did, I grabbed myself a bass preset called Source from Analab 5. And all I did was just play the root note, repeating over and over, as you guys can just see here. And I like to stop it right here, as you can see, just because I feel like it gives it a bit of a dark vibe, a bit more tension, instead of just having the same bass note play for a full 8. So without further ado, this is what the bass sounds like. And there we have it. Now coming into the counter melody, I got myself a preset called Becoming Human, and this is the pattern I laid down. It's a nice simple counter melody, again making use of these notes that are part of the scale where notes are one semitone apart, just like here of course, all over this joint. And at the end of the 8 bar for some variation, just took it up a whole octave, as you can see. Making use of the same notes but just pitching them differently can also just give it a nice little vibe, which is just what I did there. And before I play you this preset, just know that this kind of gives me like a Game Boy vibe. It gives me a bit of a retro sound, and I thought it just sounded really nice over the reverse guitar alongside the bass. But without further ado, this is what the counter melody sounds like. And there we have it, super nice ambient dark, especially in that Future ATL Jacob vibe. First thing I did, got myself an instance of an EQ cutting off all the lows. Then I got myself a preset, which is the basic one preset from Gross Beat, laying down this nice little pattern, giving it that glitchy vibe. Next up, of course, is a bit of delay. These are the presets I used on it, but keeping it quite as like a subtle delay, a bit more of like an ear candy thing. And then finally, again, some more reverb, just to really make the sound ambient, sounding super nice and lush. For stereo separation, I stereo separated the sound 55%, just to really widen this counter melody. And now, last but not least, I got myself the bell, the producer grind bell, the tubular bell, whatever you want to call the bell. But it's the bell you always hear and love. So I got it playing literally every 4 bar, and it's quite that simple. There's nothing more, nothing less to it, just hits every 4 bar, and this is what the full pattern sounds like. And there we have it. Now, as for the effects, all I did was just get a nice little EQ again, cutting off all the lows for the bell. And then some Valhalla Vintage Verb yet again, just to add some ambience. But then, the last thing I actually did to this sample, all I did was just render all the sounds out, and then take it down 2 semitones, going from an F sharp minor back into an E minor, So as you can see, with this creative process when I made a sample, I really think it's important to always adjust the pitch. Gives it a lot of creative freedom. It also lets you think outside the box, especially because it's like a refreshing sound to the ear. Took it down 2 semitones, and now this is what the final sample that ATL Jacob would have for Future. And as you guys can hear, sounds super dope, super fire. Of course, having it a bit of a lower pitch always gives it that darker feel, especially when you go in the 2 to 4 semitone range in my opinion. But let's just get straight into the drums. So going into the drums, first things first of course is the snare pattern. And of course, you know, when ATL does the snare patterns for Future, they go kind of crazy, and that's exactly what I did. It's essentially just a 4-bar looped over, but to break it down for you, we'll just focus in this section. So if we took away all of these extra little snares, first things first, I got myself a nice simple pattern as you can see here, except with this extra one for a bit of bounce. Then the next thing I did was actually go into my magnet tool, take it up to a 1/4 step as you guys can see here, and just insert these rolls with a little extra like snare playing up higher. A nice little roll down here below. And then I got this nice little roll, but I'm changing the velocity as you guys can see, just making it sound super dope. And then towards the latter end here, got myself another roll again, bit of a duckage of velocity, playing again with another snare in the middle. And then over here, I literally just follow, as you can see again, kind of just like dropping down pattern in terms of a snare. And all I actually did was copy and paste it over, and it's that simple. The last thing I actually did, just changed it up a bit, you know what I'm saying? This little roll, little clap here, and that's how you get a nice and dope snare pattern. Keep it interesting in the first 4-bar, copy and paste it over for a full 8, and then just a little bit of variation, as you can just see from right here, is a bit of a difference to what was going on here. And that's all you actually need. But enough of my yapping. This is what the snare pattern sounds like. And there we have it, sounding nice, dope, and when we hear it with the rest of the drums, it's going to go absolutely crazy. And of course, speaking of the rest of the drums, you can't go wrong with going with the hi-hats. As you can see again, it's a bit of a, I wouldn't even say that complex of a pattern, but it's a 4-bar looped over just like it was prior with the snare rolls. And if we look over in this little 4-bar section, still kept the magnet tool in the 1/4 step. And when we look in here, it's just a nice little pitch down, got some little rolls going, another roll over here, 2 back-to-back rolls. As you can see again, with this little part actually, if you go on the magnet tool and then go back in the 3rd beat, it's a nice little switch up that I've got going up here, and it sounds really, really fire. And then of course with a little roll following it, going back up to the magnet tool into 1/4 step, and then just finishing it off with these nice 2 rolls. And all I did was copy and paste it over to make the full 8-bar, and I didn't switch up anything, so it's like a nice little 4-bar repeated. And now this is what the hat sounds like. And there we have it. And now for the 808, of course, I'm using a Yeet 808, also known as like the Busy 808, which is from his, you know, hit song Busy. Super fire 808, and this is essentially the pattern I've got down for it. Following this nice little E note, of course, because that is the root note of the pattern. But then for a bit of variation, I play these higher octave notes, which just sound really fire, and then introduce this nice little roll at the end to keep it interesting for the listeners. And one thing I need you guys to note is always max out your velocities. It's very important, especially for your 808s and kicks. Say it in every video, can't emphasize it enough. It just makes your 808s hit harder, makes your kick hit harder, and it sounds doper for artists when they want to rap on it. Especially if you're trying to make stuff like Future, you want them 808s to be hitting hard, so that's why I did that. And then looking at the kick as well, it's essentially just the 808 pattern repeated over, but just at the same note. And without further ado, this is what the 808 and the kick sound like. And there we have it, sounding super dope and fire. But now for the final drum pattern, which is of course the open hat. It's a nice simple pattern I've got going, and ATL loves to use his open hats, and all I actually did for this was just go in this 2-bar, place one here where the 808 would hit, just making it a bit harder, a bit more punchier when the 808 comes in, and just have it repeat for a full 8-bar as you can see. And that's all I actually did. So without further ado, this is what the full beat sounds like. But now, last but not least, let me just break down the beat pattern for y'all. So, looking at the pattern, we first start off with an 8-bar intro with the bass and the basic reverse guitar, alongside the kick and hats coming in at the start of every 4. Then we come into the chorus, which is 16 bars, coming in with just the basic, reverse effect, with the bells of course, and then all the basic drums. Then for the second half of the chorus, which is the second 8-bar, making it a total of 16. Got myself the second component coming in, which was the counter melody, alongside everything else and the open hats. But now focusing in on the verse, it's essentially just a free 8-bar verse, which is 24 bars in total. But focusing on the first part, I've got pretty much the essential drums playing with the bell, but I've got no kick coming in because I wanted to just let it soothe into the beginning of the verse. But now for the main part of the verse, which is the second 8-bar, which is when you're 16 bars deep. You know what I'm saying? Got myself the counter, the bell, the reverse, and I've introduced the kick, of course, giving it that fired up kind of tempo, especially with the high hitting kick. And now coming into the last 8-bar of the verse, I like to call this the pre-hook because it's, the part of the verse before the hook, kind of in the name. But all I actually do is place all my melodies in, including the bass line, introduce the snares, hi-hats come in a bit later, and then keep the open hat in. And all I actually do from this point onwards is copy and paste this pattern over, so I have another chorus and a verse. And then last but not least, I just copy and paste the chorus one more time, making it a total of 1 intro, 2 verses, and 3 hooks. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how ATL Jacob makes his beats for Future. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, of course, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.